Our server is set up to be twitter.decal.awindustries.com, but don't visit it because it's not a real website. It's just a server that's taking and committing and spitting out information. So we actually have this implemented with the get protocol. So here's a URL that you want to send parameters to. So remember I said there's a URL followed by a question mark, and then you put any information you want to send after or get after. So you can attach parameters like this. So for example, if you wanted to get any posts that are created after this time, then you could say put this URL and then put the question mark, and then key. Don't worry about the key. It's just kind of like a secret, I guess. So you need that key to connect to our server. So key equals Twitter. By the way, isn't this clever? Twitter is greater than Twitter. And then remember, so these are two key value pairs. So here's the key. I guess it's a bad example that's named key, but so key value and key value, right? So the keys are key and created after. So these are the things, like the names and the parameters. And our server knows what these mean. So that's why you have to have a value. You have to have a key associated. And the values that you send are this string that is the key, and this value that is the the search parameters of what kind of tweets that you want. So this URL, along with these parameters, will actually return all the tweets that are created after this page. Does that make sense? So it gets basically a really easy way to send and receive information, just putting things in the URL, putting all the information in the URL. There is another one that's called post, which can't really be visualized. It doesn't actually send it through the URL, but you can see it if you go use Firebug or the Chrome or Safari debug console, and then you go see the network or whatever. Yeah, if you look at the web traffic through the network tab or whatever, you'll see things being sent. So for example, you posted something and it says first name equals whatever and last name equals whatever, but it isn't actually sent through the URL. Takes a secret passageway. Okay, so post versus get. There are a couple of really important points about why they're different and why they're not different. And you should probably pay attention because this is a prime example of what would be on a quiz. Just saying. So the good thing about post is it's very secure, or it's more secure because it hides the data away from plain sight. I guess more secure than get, because get basically puts it in the URL, right? So anyone can see it. You can even because it's part of the URL, you can bookmark it. You can send it to your friends. They'll see the exact same thing that you would have seen. It remains in your browser history, which may be good or bad if you put your password there or something. The server caches it. Oh yeah, the server caches it. So if you, isn't it the browser caches it?
The server caches the request.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, the server caches it, so it might not have to do things. Might not have to do the computation over again, so it's a little bit more efficient. Post, it handles long requests well. Remember I said that there was a limit to get? So the number of things that you put in your URL, is there a limit to post? I'll probably use some giant limit, but, huh?
Actually,
Packet limit?
there is
Oh, packet limit is super complicated. Or something small. That is the server can't cache these values, and you should do this if you're doing password input, stuff like that, just so it doesn't get sent over the URL. And there are more other things. Does anyone have any questions about these two? Everyone is an expert at post and get.
For post and get, the main difference between post and get is that you should use get if you're going to see the same thing over and over again. Get is basically if you have a parameter at the very end of the page, it's get page equals login, and every time you go to that get request, it will always show the same thing, so people can bookmark it. That's when you use get. Post is for when you want to submit form information, login information to a page.
So here, have you guys ever so I think Google is get. So if you make a Google thing web design, see this search? See this search? Question mark, HL equals English, and source equals whatever. This is a get request. So it's sending all these things. So you may have noticed that whenever you make a Google search, you can actually copy and paste that URL and send it to your friend, and they'll see whatever you saw. But have you guys ever been to websites where you're I don't know, searching for internship or something, and then the website uses a form, a post submission for doing their searching, and then you try to send the URL to your friends, but they don't see anything? It's because you can't. The data is not encoded in the URL. You can't just send that around. It's based on what you entered in before, which is and what do I say? Oh yeah, so those are post-based submissions, so you can't, like, it's not encoded in the URL. Yes?
So is that like when, say, you want to send like a Facebook picture to like one of your friends, but then like if they're not friends with that person, then they can't see that picture or whatever?
I think that's a different problem. So they're doing, I think Facebook does some kind of authentication on the server side. Like when you try to see the image, it first makes sure that you're that person. That's different from the problem of like get versus post.
But that's a get request, right? Like,
Yeah, I think
for me that's a get.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if this is like question mark and then some value or key equals value, that's a get request.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does Google Maps use post? Because like sometimes when you try to send, like if you've like searched for directions, then it won't
Maybe.
show up for the
Not exactly sure.
No, because it's using Ajax, so it doesn't reload the page, and all the information that it grabs from the server is sort of like hidden underneath. So like, I think a lot of times when you use Google Maps and you like try to press like make a link or there's like that link button, it'll generate the proper URL with the get parameter so that you can send that link along to people and still maintain the information.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. So this will be a really, kind of important when we start going to Ajax, because a lot of the Ajax things like have some like they ask you what method you want to use. So what is Ajax? It is not your household cleaner or cleanser, says Alex. Did you say cleanser? Household cleanser? Cleaner? Isn't cleanser like your face cleanser or something? Yeah, okay, I'm a girl. I don't know. Yeah, she says yes. Okay, I'm right. Okay, so Ajax is not this thing. So Ajax actually stands for, see how these things all have like really long names and like they all have like 4-letter like acronyms or something? Anyway, so it stands for asynchronous JavaScript and XML. An asynchronous part means that it fetches and sends data without refreshing the page. So Facebook probably uses this when you like get a new, or Twitter uses this. So when on Twitter you like get new like tweets or whatever, it doesn't actually refresh the page. You can just say see new things, and it'll populate the page, right? Usually in traditional like web design, you have to, in order to get information, you have to like send some kind of requests which sends it to the server, and the server sends you back something to render. But with Ajax, you can just do it without refreshing the page, which is really useful for today's generation of web app users because nobody even wants to wait long at all. So JavaScript, you know this already. In XML, it stands for Extensible Markup Language. It's like HTML, but don't worry about it too much. Here's an example of XML where you have like books. So basically, it's kind of like the same thing as the hierarchical, like parent, like nested thing that HTML is. So you have a book, you have information about its title, publisher, and author, and like some closing tag. But don't worry about it. Yeah. So what can Ajax do for us? So it's funny that you mentioned Google Maps because that was my next example. Must be side view. So when you view, I might have a question. So when you view Ajax or when you view Google Maps, you'll notice that when you scroll around. Wait. Yeah. Did you see that loading on the side? Google's too fast. Okay. Oh wait, that's the end of the world. Never mind. It's the end of the world. How do I do something more interesting? Oh, zoom in. Okay. Yeah. Oh my god. That's my face. Okay, yeah, see? So it's doing all this stuff, and you'll notice it's kind of slow. Crash. Thanks a lot, Google, during my example. Okay, so you zoom in. Yeah. So you notice it's like loading all these different things, and it is getting and it is requesting the server for stuff and getting information back. Like if you scroll around, it like gets information about this particular region and sends you back all the pictures. But you'll notice that the website is actually not refreshing. And Google Maps uses Ajax for this. So what it looks like. Oh, so what's going on? Just for the Ajax use. So you visit maps.google.com. Their web server receives the request and serves you with the web page, right? This is everything that we've been doing so far. So this is normal, right? Everyone got that? You remember the client-server interaction? And then you have your asynchronous action. So remember we were talking about JavaScript like event handlers. So the page has some event like handlers on it where you are scrolling around or you click some things, and some events are triggered, then each magnification kind of redraws the page. So when you click or scroll or zoom in or whatever, the page sends Google a request saying, oh, I'm in this area now. And then Google sends you back all the information you need to redraw the page. But it doesn't actually refresh the page, which is really nice. Because it'd be super annoying if you're trying to like go places. It's like there's like a UC Berkeley thing, right? Like if you look at the UC Berkeley campus map, is it? It's like this thing where you have to like, if you want to go places, it like refreshes the page like every time or something, right? You click on different pages and it like has to refresh every time, and that's super annoying. Whereas Google Maps or like any other website using Ajax it seems really intuitive. You like click stuff and things load on the fly, and everything's nice and fast. Okay, I just threw a bunch of code at you. So how do we do Ajax with jQuery? So even though this looks like a lot of code, the code for doing Ajax with vanilla JavaScript is a lot more horrendous and like long. So be happy you have jQuery. So basically, you use this method that's called Ajax. So you just say $sign. So $sign is kind of synonymous with the jQuery object. So $.ajax, and you pass it this whole hash of things. So remember when I talked about dictionaries? It has key and value, key and value. So you have URL, and you put the URL of something, whatever you want to send to, and you have data, and you can send. So these are kind of nested dictionaries. So you send whatever data you want, right? So remember when we were talking about like doing GET requests or POST requests? You have like question mark, key equals value, key equals value. So this is what data. That's that data that you send. And POST does that too. It just doesn't do an URL like that. The data type. For now, we'll use JSONP. JSONP is actually, you don't have to worry about it too much. It's just a way for you to make requests to other domains. Because usually it doesn't let you do that for cross-browser like forgery things, but this is a way to kind of bypass that. Yes.
So like pretending we were writing like a search function. So if somebody wanted to search for whatever key terms, like how would we pass those to the value 1, value 2 there?
Wait, what?
Like if we were writing the search function for the website,
Okay.
somebody searched like Christopher Columbus.
Okay.
How would we get, because it has data, key 1, value 1, key 2, value 2. How would we get like Christopher and Columbus to value 1 and value 2?
Okay, so right now we don't have any backend things in place like PHP that would normally do a kind of form submission for you. So right now, when you do JavaScript, what you want to, remember you can have event handlers, so you can have some kind of event handler on the button. So whenever it's clicked, you go grab both the data from both the text fields. So like what we learned before with jQuery, you can do like get information about the page. So you can say like whatever the text field is, .value, and then grab those values and then pass it to this Ajax function. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but how exactly would you pass it to the function?
Oh, because this is all in JavaScript, right? So you could actually say like have this inside of a so you could say like the button .click and then have an anonymous function, and this block of code is inside that anonymous function, and then have these things be like $text field .value. Because this is all JavaScript, so you can kind of intermix things. It's not like these are all separate from each other. You can kind of mix things around because it's all.
Okay, so you can put like the $signs like anywhere and then
Yeah.
put stuff.
Yeah. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. Oh yeah, and then you have these are just what your callbacks were. So you have some success function or error function. So maybe you wanted to like append something, like if you search for something, like using this example, you search for something and your Ajax returns you some data, right? So function data, you have some status or whatever, then you can actually just append that data to the page. Or this is just the actions that you take if your Ajax function was successful. And this is similarly for errors. So you can basically put whatever you want in these two. They're just callbacks, which is just like what we discussed earlier. Does everyone know what callbacks are? It's just like when you click something, the callback is called, right? Like you call it back, right? So these are callbacks too. So it's asking, so when you say success and then function something, or error function something, it's basically saying if this Ajax call was successful, call this piece of code inside here. Or if not, call this code. And you can do whatever you want on your page. And make things like highlight or whatever. Yeah.
So what's the structure of the data? Is it going to be another dictionary?
Yeah, they're dictionaries. So you say key 1, value 1, key 2, value 2.
Okay, so what the values of the server?
Oh, you mean this data?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like in an array.
It depends what the server does. Like the server can return anything.
Oh,
It's in JSON format, which is like JavaScript object notation. So for the purposes of this project, I think it's just written in your lab with the
Yeah,
return.
it's explained in your lab how the information, the data gets passed to you and how to
Yeah.
parse it.
But it usually depends on the server. It's not like set for every single website ever.
So generally you have to look at the documentation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Or you could actually visit this. You could visit if it's a GET request. You could actually visit that URL using this URL and append these things after it, and you'll see the JSON in the browser. Or similarly, you could just say console.log this data, and you can see it. There are various ways you can debug. Questions? This is really difficult. Okay, don't call me over whenever I could. Wait, I don't have my phone on. Okay, I'm just checking. Wait, okay, so this is your mini project, which will be due, John.
So your mini project's gonna be due the Friday after you get back from spring break.
Yeah.
So,
And then after that, you'll have your final project.
yes. So I've accounted for the fact that you probably won't do any work during spring break. So there's gonna be like a little more than a week to complete this mini project.
Oh, so here's more information about callbacks, I guess. So callbacks are pieces of executable code that are passed to an argument or other code, and it allows you to control timing of function calls. So what I was saying before, like when you click something, this thing happens. Or if your Ajax thing was successful, this thing happens. If it was an error, this thing happens. So it's kind of like controls like where your code, what happens in your code, and you can also use it to do timing of sequences of actions. So you could say like jQuery. What's an example of this?
So it's like doing a callback versus just calling something.
Okay, so for example, I think slide up has some kind of callback as well. So usually if you say like slide up and then change a color, the timing is not too clear. Like if you just have things like stacked in a row, it doesn't mean that those things are going to happen like one after each other. So what you actually want to do to control timing like more specifically is attach them to callbacks. So if you wanted like some slide up to happen right after the slide down, if you wanted a slide down to happen right after the slide up, you couldn't just put it right after here. You'd have to put it in a callback inside of the slide up function. Does that make sense?
Wait, so is callback a function then, or
Yeah, callback is a function.
so it's not? Is it being used in that example?
No. I'm just giving an example of how you would want to, how you could control timing more precisely.
Okay, so like if you were to insert it in that thing, where exactly would like the callback function go?
Oh, I don't know. You'd have to look at the documentation, but I think it's just like click. Like you just put a function inside here. Like where these open parens are. So it'd be slide up, open paren, function, parentheses, whatever in this thing again. So yeah.
Wait, so can you, I think you already said it, but can you clarify again, like how is that different from if you were to put a separate function like underneath it?
Yeah, it's because I don't know how jQuery, like,
So-
there might be some weird, like, queuing things.
So like what happens is, if you take a look at the slide up animation, sometimes it can be slow depending on what you configure it as. So what will happen is, let's just say the slide up took like 1 second to complete. So it would run this line of code and start sliding up, and then meanwhile, if you had an extra line after this that said, change the CSS color to red, then that would happen immediately after this line gets executed.
Yeah.
So you would see the slide up, and then right after that, while it's still sliding, you would see the color change. So in order to get the timing right, like depending on what you want to do, you probably want to have some items slide up first, and then get the color change. So the callbacks allow you to control the timing in that respect by saying, I want something to happen first, and then this, instead of everything happening at the same time.
So whatever we put after will get called right after it's executed, but not after it's completed?
Yeah,
is
it
what you're
doesn't,
saying?
if you put something after here, it doesn't mean do this after this first one is completed.
Okay.
They just like run, randomly. Yes.
Wait, so would that then be like, so if you wanted to do that, like make sure it doesn't turn red until after it's fully slid up, would you be like, after the money this dot slide up, would you like money this dot callback?
You would actually put it in here. So slide back probably has a callback. So a lot of these animation functions have callbacks. So just like how click has a callback, right? So maybe I should code this instead.
Wait, so then it's like specific to each function?
Yeah, you have to look it up. I use jQuery, sorry. Oh, what text editor should I use?
Use it.
Ah! This is taking so long.
You have to text me.
Huh? Oh, I did just text this one.
You don't have it at all.
Yeah. So you would say like, for example, you could say like something dot.
Just copy the questions.
I probably did it last time.
Oh, I meant like,
Oh yeah, and then like something dot slide up, and then put a function inside here too. Do something else. Right? You guys read that one?
No.
Can you guys do that?
Yeah.
So you have like something that click function, and this is the callback for slide up, right? So you have something that slide up, and then inside there you have a function, which is the callback. So this stuff will be executed right after slide up finishes.
Okay, wait, so what's the callback for what?
This nested function inside here, like do something else after slide up finishes, is the callback to slide up. But then this whole thing, like function, something, this, and this, is the callback to click.
Wait, so then you make a callback by putting it inside the function?
Yes. So callbacks are usually defined like, so here's the callback to slide up, and here's the callback to click. Does that make sense?
Wait,
So if you look in the documentation, they usually have information on how, yeah, so they have slide up, duration, and then callback, right? They tell you where to put the callback. And callbacks are just anonymous functions. So you can just stick an anonymous function inside of here. Does that make sense? I can come help you later if that's confusing. I know it's really confusing. I'm sure everyone is confused with that also. But does not want to ask. Okay, so the future of Ajax. So Ajax is everywhere, as I discussed earlier, and web apps, Google, Facebook, Twitter, example. I'm sure all the new web apps have some kind of Ajax component, just because that's what people want to see. So there's some limitations. It is a poll technology, and what I mean by poll technology is you have to keep asking the server. Like, remember, you have to keep doing requests to get new information. So a good analogy that I learned in 61C is polling versus push technology is if you wanted to borrow something from your friend, right? Or like if you're trying to reach your friend and it's like she wasn't answering her phone, but her roommate was at home. So you keep calling and saying, is she there yet? No. And then you call again later, is she there yet? No. And you like call back like 10 minutes later, like, is she there yet? So that's what polling means, right? You have to keep asking, like even though you don't know it's available. So the smarter thing to do would just like tell the roommate like, oh, can you ask her to call me when she comes back? So that's what push technology is. And so when the data is read, the server contacts us instead of having to ask the server repeatedly when it's ready. Does that make sense? That's such a good analogy. I'm so proud of that, even though it wasn't mine. Oh yeah, the next cool thing is HTML5 WebSockets, and we might go over it during the advanced web design topics, but it's not really in the scope of this course, and it allows push technology, and it's super new, it's part of HTML5. So you can talk to me later if you're interested in that. There are a lot of cool like new JavaScript libraries or like JavaScript web apps that are like chat servers or things like that that use WebSockets now. Cool. Okay. Oh, here's some extra stuff, including articles about these things if you're interested. And also, so here is the end of lecture. I have a special slide for it. Please fill out our mid-semester feedback form so we can know what we're doing right. You can tell me, just like they told me last semester, that I was talking way too fast. It will be on the website, so it's the first announcement on the website decal page. Today's lab, I guess, process out. This is mini lecture is due week after spring break. 2 weeks from today. That is not right because that was updated. Look at this. So it's actually due Friday after break. And coming up, our next couple lectures, we only have 4 lectures left. Can you believe that? So we have PHP, MySQL and databases, advanced topics, and we have our final presentation. And the final project is actually going to be a partner project, so you might want to start thinking about who you want to be who do you want to be your project partner? Is that proper English? Okay. Who you want to be? I'm so tired. Okay. And have a nice spring break. Yes. Okay, cool. Man, can you not post this on YouTube? Can you speak English? No, I told my parents that my English is deteriorating like every year because of these. Like, you don't